On September 4th, 476 AD, a boy was removed from a throne. He was 14 years old. He had been emperor for 10 months. He had never commanded an army, never passed a law, never made a single decision that changed anything. He was a figurehead, a child placed on the most powerful throne in the ancient world by his father, who needed a puppet with a title. The man who removed him was a barbarian general named Odoacer. He did not kill the boy. He sent him to a villa in southern Italy with a pension. He took the imperial regalia, the crown, the robes, the symbols of Roman power, and he mailed them to Constantinople, with a letter that said, "There is no need for two emperors." That was it. No battle, no burning, no dramatic last stand. The Western Roman Empire, which had governed the most powerful civilization in the ancient world for 1,000 years, ended with a child being sent to a villa and a package being mailed. And nobody noticed. This is 476, the day the ancient world ended. Life went on as normal. By the end of this video, you will understand why the fall of Rome is the most misunderstood event in the history of Western civilization. You will learn why the people who lived through 476 AD did not know they were living through the end of an era, and why that fact is more terrifying than any battle. You will learn about the boy emperor whose name contains one of history's darkest jokes, a name that combines the founder of Rome with the first Roman emperor given to the last. You will learn why Rome did not fall. It dissolved slowly over centuries, and why the date 476 is a fiction that historians invented to make sense of something that had no clear ending. And you will understand why, when civilizations die, they almost never announce it. 476, the year the ancient world ended, nobody sent a memo. To understand 476, you must understand what Rome had become by the 5th century AD. The Rome of 476 is not the Rome of Caesar. It is not the Rome of Augustus. It is not even the Rome of a century earlier. It is a ghost of those things, an empire that still carries the name and the institutions and the symbols of the greatest civilization the ancient world produced, but has been hollowing out from within for generations. The Western Roman Empire in the 5th century is a state that can no longer defend its own borders, pay its own soldiers, or enforce its own laws across its own territory. The legions that once held the Rhine and the Danube are gone, replaced by barbarian federates, Germanic warriors who fight for Rome in exchange for land and payment, but whose loyalty is to their commanders, not to the empire. The emperors of the late Western Empire are, almost without exception, children or puppets. Real power belongs to military strongmen, Roman in name, barbarian in origin, who make and unmake emperors as it suits them. By 475 AD, the man making and unmaking emperors is a Roman general of barbarian origin named Orestes. He has just deposed the previous emperor and placed his own son on the throne. His son's name is Romulus Augustulus. Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome. Augustus, the first and greatest Roman emperor. The last emperor of the Western Roman Empire carries both names. History has a sense of humor, and it is rarely kind. Romulus Augustulus is approximately 14 years old when his father places him on the throne in October 475 AD. He is not recognized as legitimate by the Eastern Roman Emperor in Constantinople. He is not recognized by significant parts of the Western Empire itself. He is, in the most precise sense, a local ruler, a boy with a title sitting in Ravenna, the last capital of the Western Empire, while his father Orestes actually governs. The soldiers who are supposed to be defending this empire have not been paid. Orestes has promised them land in Italy, a third of Italian territory, in exchange for their service. He has not delivered on that promise. Among those soldiers is Odoacer. He is of Germanic origin, possibly Skirian, possibly Hun. The sources disagree. He is a military commander of considerable ability and, more importantly, considerable ambition. When Orestes fails to pay the troops and fails to deliver the promised land, Odoacer leads a revolt. The revolt is swift and decisive. Orestes is captured and executed in August 476. Ravenna falls without significant resistance, and then Odoacer stands in the imperial city with the boy emperor before him. He makes a decision that tells you everything about what Rome has become by 476. He does not kill the boy. He does not even bother to make himself emperor. Odoacer's decision not to claim the title of Western Roman Emperor is one of the most significant non-events in history. He could have made himself emperor. Previous barbarian strongmen had done exactly that, taken Roman titles to legitimize their power. But Odoacer looks at the Western Roman Empire in 476 and makes a calculation. The title is worthless. It carries no real authority. It impresses no one. It would make him responsible for a bankrupt, collapsing state without giving him any actual additional power. Instead, he sends the imperial regalia to Constantinople. To the Eastern Emperor Zeno, with a letter explaining that the Western Empire no longer requires a separate emperor, that one emperor ruling from Constantinople is sufficient for the Roman world. Zeno is not pleased, but he is also not in a position to do anything about it. He eventually gives Odoacer the title of patrician, a lesser Roman dignity, and effectively recognizes the new reality. The Western Roman Empire ceases to exist, not with a declaration, not with a battle, not with a formal dissolution. It ceases to exist because the man who has just conquered it decides that its highest title is not worth having. That is how 1,000-year civilization ends. And in the towns and villages of Italy, Gaul, Spain, and North Africa, the territories that used to be the Western Roman Empire, the morning of September 5th, 476 looks exactly like the morning of September 3rd. This is the part of the story that history textbooks struggle to convey. The fall of Rome, as it is taught, as it is imagined, as it appears in paintings and films and popular culture, is a dramatic event. Burning buildings, barbarians at the gates, the last defenders making a final stand, the eternal city consumed by fire. None of that happened in 476. Rome, the city, had already been sacked twice, by the Visigoths in 410, by the Vandals in 455. Those were dramatic events. People noticed. People wrote about them with horror and disbelief. 476 is different. 476 is an administrative change in Ravenna. A boy is removed from a throne. Some paperwork is sent to Constantinople. A barbarian general becomes the de facto ruler of Italy under a Roman title he has borrowed from the East. The farmers in the fields of Italy do not know that the Western Roman Empire has ended. The merchants in the markets of Carthage, now under Vandal control, do not know. The bishops writing letters to each other about theological disputes do not know. The monks copying manuscripts in their scriptoria do not know. Some of them will not know for years. Some of them will never know. Because the concept of the Western Roman Empire ending is not something anyone articulates clearly for decades after 476. The writer Cassiodorus, working a generation later, describes 476 as a significant moment. But even he does not describe it as the end of Rome. He describes it as a change of administration. The end of the ancient world is not an event. It is a gradual disappearance, a slow fading of things that had always been there until one day they are not, and no one can say exactly when they went. To understand why nobody noticed in 476, you have to understand how much had already been lost before 476. The Roman road network, the arteries of the empire, the infrastructure that had connected Britain to Egypt, that had allowed armies to march and goods to move and information to travel, has been deteriorating for decades. Not destroyed, just not maintained. The money ran out. The engineers are gone. The roads still exist, but they are crumbling. The aqueducts, the engineering marvel that had brought clean water to 1 million people in the city of Rome alone, are failing. Not all at once, one by one. The city of Rome's population has been collapsing for a century, from perhaps 1 million people at its peak to maybe 100,000 by 476. The aqueducts that served 1 million people are more than sufficient for 100,000, but they are not being repaired when they break. The legal system, the extraordinary achievement of Roman jurisprudence, the framework of law that had governed an empire from Scotland to Mesopotamia, is fragmenting. In the territories now controlled by Germanic kingdoms, Roman law and Germanic custom exist in uneasy parallel. The unified legal system is gone. The Latin literacy that had unified the empire's educated class, the shared language in literature and rhetorical tradition that had made a senator in Britain and a senator in Syria part of the same civilization, is retreating, not disappearing, retreating into monasteries, into the church, into the diminishing circle of people who still have access to education. All of this is happening before 476. All of this continues after 476. The date is a point on a line, not a break in it. Romulus Augustulus lives. He is sent to the Castellum Lucullanum, a fortified villa on the Bay of Naples, once a resort of the Roman aristocracy, now a comfortable exile. He receives a pension from Odoacer. He lives there in comfort for years. Some sources suggest he is still alive decades later. The last emperor of the Western Roman Empire outlives the empire. He lives in a villa by the sea, drawing his pension, watching the world that used to belong to his title reorganize itself without him. His name continues to haunt historians. Romulus, the man who founded Rome in legend, who killed his brother Remus to build the city on the Palatine Hill. Augustus, the man who transformed the Republic into the Empire, who gave his name to a month of the year, who presided over the Pax Romana. These are the two names that bracket the entire Roman story, the founder and the perfecter, the beginning and the first great peak, and the child who carries both names is the last. The ending written into the naming, whether by coincidence or by the particular cruelty of history, is one of the details that makes 476 feel less like history and more like literature. Rome began with a Romulus. It ended with a Romulus. The circle closes. Here is what 476 actually was, not the fall of Rome. Rome did not fall in 476. Rome had been falling for a century before 476 and continued to influence the world for centuries after. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, survives for another 1,000 years until 1453, a date you know if you have watched our video on that number. 476 is the moment historians chose, looking backward from a distance, to mark the end of something that had no clear ending. It is a convenient date, a useful fiction. The last Western emperor deposed, the regalia sent east, the title discontinued. Clean, bookmarkable. But what 476 actually represents is something more important and more terrifying than a battle lost or a city burned. 476 represents the moment a civilization became invisible to itself. The people living through the 5th century did not experience the fall of Rome. They experienced a series of changes: political instability, economic decline, military pressure, administrative fragmentation, each one survivable, each one explicable, each one not quite the catastrophe that would force them to say, "This is the end." And then one day, The thing they thought was still there was gone, not taken, not destroyed, just gone, dissolved, present so gradually in its absence that no one could point to the morning it disappeared. Civilizations do not fall. They forget what they were. They lose the ability to maintain what they built. They stop being able to enforce the rules that made them work. And then, one day, someone sends the crown to Constantinople, and no one thinks it worth fighting over. Odoacer did not destroy Rome. Rome had already left. He just turned off the lights in an empty room. 476. The year a child emperor was sent to a villa, a package was mailed to Constantinople, and the ancient world ended without anyone filing a report. The last Roman emperor of the West spent his remaining years in a villa on the Bay of Naples, drawing his pension, watching the sea. Nobody came to rescue him. Nobody needed to. The thing he was emperor of had already ceased to matter before he lost the title. If this story made you think, leave a comment. Do you think we would recognize the end of our own civilization if we were living through it? Subscribe to the Vault of Numbers. Every week, one number, one story history forgot to tell you. The next number in the vault? 49. A Roman general stood at the edge of a river. Crossing it was treason. He crossed it anyway, and the republic that 476 ended began to die on that riverbank 4 centuries earlier. The vault remains open